FPL Gameweek25 Team Selection on the FPL Joe YouTube channel. Today we'll be recapping Gameweek 24 and discussing all the major considerations in my Gameweek 25 transfer plans, plus future transfer plans as we approach the very first, newly confirmed double game week of the season, and the 4 teams confirmed to be blanking in Gameweek 31. And of course, all timestamps are in the description if you want to skip to a specific part. So without further ado, let's take a look at how my team did in Gameweek 24. 62 points all out, a tiny red arrow from 61k down to 67k. And looking at my team, as has become the tradition, let's start with Bruno Fernandes. Bruno racked up 2 assists in Gameweek 24, securing 2 bonus points in the process for a 10-pointer. As my differential captain this week, up against Erling Haaland with 148% effective ownership, it's one of the few occasions this season where I've gone against the default captain and actually got it right. Fulham put up a real fight in the second half, scoring twice and even having a goal chalked off, but a wonderful turn from Bruno allowed him to feed a ball to Šeško, wrapping up the game with a winner in the 94th minute. And as per usual, it's a combination of routes to points, nailed minutes and genuine talent that makes him such a formidable pick this season. There were even 2 very close penalty calls, which could have added another 6 to 11 points to his score, had Fulham been anything short of perfect with their last-ditch tackles. And so, for his double-digit haul as my captain, Bruno Fernandes is my team's MVP for Gameweek 24. And next, sticking with United, Mbeumo. Mbeumo owners were really unfortunate not to see a return from him this week. Having scored in the previous 2 games, and with the increased minutes likelihood with Dorgo out, all factors pointed towards more returns in Gameweek 24, and the chances were there. He racked up almost 0.7 XGI against Fulham, most of that in XG, but was missing that final clinicality in front of goal to register the return for this week. So while unlucky for Gameweek 24, it's really promising going forwards, as he won't be missing chances like these very often. But the frustration around this is compounded by the player I actually chose to transfer out this week, Gordon. I owned Anthony Gordon through a 6-game run of Amarim's United, Burnley, an out-of-form Palace, Leeds, Wolves and Villa, and in those 6 games he managed just 15 points in total, averaging only 73 minutes per game. I eventually sold him, making the obvious upgrade to Mbeumo in Gameweek 24. So what does he do? He plays 90 minutes as the front man and scores a goal. So while it does add insult to injury, if nothing else, I am glad to be rid of him now. And then looking at the rest of my team, it was another success for the Arsenal defensive triple-up, securing another 19 points this week. And looking at their past 4 game weeks, that's from when I added Gabriel to the team, they've averaged over 15 points per game week as a triple-up, comfortably outscoring the other 2 highly owned Arsenal assets, Rice and Saka, over the same period. And with Saka's injury, many will be considering which triplet to move to for Arsenal's double in Gameweek 26. Rice is still a decent option, but I'm very happy sticking with the defenders for the 2 doubling fixtures which both carry very good clean sheet odds. There's also an easy FA Cup tie in between, offering these slightly more rotation risk players, such as Timber, a stress-free rest between the 2 games in the double. And then a couple of important mentions. Enzo scored a 92-minute winner against West Ham, also securing 2 bonus for an 8-pointer. It would have been nice if he'd not got booked for the celebration, but given that it didn't affect his final bonus points, we'll let him off this time. Foden was benched again, having undoubtedly lost his place in the City lineup until further notice. He was a player that I wasn't thrilled to be starting anyway, but given that all the alternatives who I was considering, who I would have needed a hit to get to as well, blanked, a 1-pointer isn't the end of the world. However, for all the same reasons, he's first in line on the chopping block for Gameweek 25. So to be honest, not a bad week by any measure. I was simply missing a few of this week's big hitters, such as Ekitike, João Pedro, Mukiele and Semenyo. So without further ado, let's move on to Gameweek 25. And we'll start off by having a look at the upcoming fixtures from Gameweeks 25 to 31. So Arsenal's win over Chelsea in the EFL Cup semi-final confirmed that they will have the very first double game week in the 2025-26 season, playing Brentford and Wolves both away in Gameweek 26. Wolves will also therefore have a double, although given that they play Arsenal, it's certainly a lot less attractive. City also progressed to the EFL Cup final, meaning that their Gameweek 31 game against Palace will be postponed, likely to Gameweek 33. This one can't be moved forwards as Palace aren't free in the Gameweek 26 midweek due to participation in European competitions. So we now know the 4 teams who'll be blanking in Gameweek 31. Arsenal, Wolves, Man City and Palace. We'll discuss more about the impact of these blanks later, but for now, let's look at Gameweek 26. As I've already got a triple up from Arsenal which I'm happy with, there's no need to do any further moves there. But if you don't have that, those should be your uncontested priority moves in the next 2 game weeks. And if you're thinking, everyone's going there and I'm chasing, should I try betting against them? No, please don't do that. The reason why everyone's going there is that they're far and away the best players to own for Gameweek 26. The justification of I'm chasing in rank or mini league is only really viable if you're going for a differential, if there's also a realistic possibility that your picks are going to outscore the template players, and there is a very, very low likelihood of that in this case, if what you're betting against is the league leaders in a comparatively easy double game week. And as for Wolves, I'm not super interested in their picks, given that they face Arsenal as one of the 2 fixtures, so it almost feels like you're betting on a game versus Forest plus 2 appearance points. The only exception would maybe be if you're going for a DEFCON midfielder, but that isn't plain sailing either, and we'll see why when we look ahead to Gameweek 31. And as I'm planning to play my wildcard in Gameweek 32, I'm not considering any City or Palace players either, as their double won't fall until after the wildcard, so I can pick them up after their blank game week, which like before will become clearer when we look ahead to Gameweek 31. The only exception is a possible sideways move of Lacroix to Munoz, which notably doesn't involve bringing in a second Palace player, simply upgrading the one that we already have. So now looking at my team. As mentioned before, it's Foden who's set to leave for Gameweek 25, and there are a couple of possible transfer targets to consider. Rodgers is one of the simplest options, nailed for 90 minutes, great output so far this season, but with concerning underlying numbers and poor recent form, actually leading to a price drop last night. Cunha and Ahmad are both set to see good minutes in the United front line. Ahmad's been a workhorse in recent weeks and has strongly asserted himself as the go-to right winger for United, but he doesn't offer the same FPL points output as Cunha, who is much more happy to be greedy with chances and thus has seen some really solid conversions so far this season, especially in the last few games. Casemiro is a DEFCON beast who's massively overperformed his XGI. The main concern with him is minutes, with an early sub not out the question and dampening his ability to reach the threshold for DEFCONs, and don't expect that level of returns to continue, although he doesn't half take his chances when given them, especially the headers. And then we've got Wilson, who takes the crown for XG over performance in this list. He's a great budget option, but again, I wouldn't count on his output being sustained in the long run. His best fixtures also start around game week 28 to 29, so there's no major rush to bring him in just yet. Ismail Assar and João Gomez are two solid picks from the blank Game Week 31 teams, but with very different profiles. You're buying Sarr for his goal output, whereas you're buying Gomez for his DEFCON, especially if you think you can pick up 2 4-pointers in double Game Week 26. But with both, you're just adding another player who you'll need to make way for in Game Week 31 when they blank. So it's really up to you if you've got enough spare free transfers to justify these punts. And finally, the simplest option, Anderson. No nonsense, consistent DEFCON output. Don't expect too much in the way of attacking returns, and frankly, sometimes he doesn't even need them. He got 3 bonus points in Game Week 24 despite no attacking returns whatsoever, just BPS output alone. So if you want a budget midfielder with consistent output, he's probably the smart choice to go for. Or go for Casemiro if you want the same DEFCON budget methodology, but with a higher minutes risk and a higher points ceiling. But in my case, with a higher budget to spend, there's one more choice to consider, Florian Wirtz. The top scoring player in FPL over the last 8 game weeks, and playing in a Liverpool side that might finally be finding its footing, Wirtz represents a stellar replacement for the outgoing Foden. He's got great underlying numbers, particularly in the recent 8 game week range, where he's averaged almost 0.7 XGI per 90. That's significantly more than his full season statistics, which include the poorer numbers he put up while settling into the Premier League. Wirtz fills a similar profile to Foden, but is in much better form, with no blank in game week 31, and is pretty much nailed for starts and minutes. I also don't mind City as the on-point, given their tendency to leak goals, pretty much regardless of the opposition. And with his percentage of goal involvement, if Liverpool do convert, there's a very high chance he'll be involved. So for Game Week 25, my planned transfer is going to be Foden to Wirtz. Now let's look a little further forward to see how this affects my future transfer plans. So moving on to double Game Week 26. It's the first double of the season, and we're ready with the triple Arsenal defence. Chelsea and United's solid fixtures are also well covered too, but one issue to sort out will be Thiago, who is one of Arsenal's 2 fixtures in their double, a nightmare fixture for any striker. But that actually works out quite well for my team, as my main goal by Game Week 31 is to put my team in a position where I can have 11 players comfortably starting, and ideally not wasting a load of transfers in the process to do it. We've started by sorting out Foden, and then in Game Week 26, killing 2 birds with one stone, we're going to move Mark Guiu to Kruppi Jr., and then we'll swap them in for Thiago. This removes one of the dead spots in my team, while also giving Thiago some solid cover for Game Week 26. And again, Mane from Wolves would have been an option here, but we'll discuss as we move on to Game Week 31 why that's not one of the choices I'm looking at. But firstly, moving on to Game Week 28. With Brentford's fixtures taking a sharp upturn, they'll finally be ready to move back into the starting 11. And at the same time, Chelsea's fixtures are going to fall off a cliff, making them, at best, bench-bound until we call upon them in Game Week 31, or at worst, a sell. And as such, we're going to start by substituting Collins for Lacroix and Thiago for Chalobah. And then to consolidate on Brentford's good fixtures, we'll move to the full triple up, swapping Enzo to Schade. Schade's currently serving a red card suspension, which will have him out until the Brighton game in Game Week 27, so assuming that he comes straight back into their squad for that game, which he should do, despite the stupidity of the decision which got him sent off in Game Week 24, he still represents a near unrivaled goal threat for Game Weeks 28 to 31. And then finally, looking at blank Game Week 31. With 2 big blanks, we'll be dropping a load of our high-value assets to the bench, including Dubravka for Raya, Haaland for Chalobah, and Gabriel for Potts. And this is why I've advised against picking up any extra City, Wolves or Palace players between now and Game Week 31, as they'll represent additional spots in your team who will need to be replaced and who won't fit on the bench. And granted, I've got 4 free transfers at this point, but bear in mind that that doesn't account for any injuries, flags, suspensions, and so on that could occur between now and then. My team's already quite well set up for the key upcoming fixture runs, so if you've already got other problems to fix, or have other booked in transfers that you need to make, I would really think twice about how much it's going to cost you to burn 2 transfers, moving the same player in and out in the next 7 game weeks. So with my team, being on Wildcard 32, we can buy back any players who we need to sell in Blank Game Week 31 to reach a full squad of 11 starters. However, this will still incur a loss if any of these players have risen in value since when we purchased them, and that's no small factor, with Raya having risen by 0.4 million, Gabriel by 0.5, and Haaland by 0.8, meaning that selling and rebuying these 3 in particular will lead to a total value of team loss of almost 1 million, likely even more by Game Week 31. And that isn't the end of the world given the many high value assets we can choose from this season, but given that we're assembling a bench boost squad for Game Week 33, we won't want to be constrained too heavily by the prices of players that we're looking to bring in, especially the ones that we'll be putting on the bench. However, for Timber and Lacroix, who at least at present don't represent any prize gains, and the same goes for Potts, who until now has been a dead spot in my team and doesn't have any value tied up in him, they can be transferred out for some more suitable, non-blanking Game Week 31 picks, and it's Fulham playing Burnley at home who are undoubtedly the go-tos here, meaning that in Blank Game Week 31, to reach my 11 starters, I'm planning to move Timber to Anderson and Potts to Wilson. This plan still offers a spare 2 free transfers in case of emergency, and is of course very much subject to change as new information appears, but it represents a solid and reliable plan to take us through to Wildcard 32, which is the reassurance that I usually look for when making any high price transfer at this point in the season. So with that all said, let's now rewind to Game Week 25 and discuss captaincy, looking at predicted points courtesy of FPL Review and Fantasy Football Hub. It's another fairly comfortable choice this week, playing an injury-ravaged Spurs team, the poster boy for routes to points, and in exceptional form, both individually and the team as a whole. My captaincy for Game Week 25 is going to go to Bruno Fernandes. And in a rare move, leaving Haaland out entirely, the vice-captaincy for this week is going to go to Gabriel. With a staggering 59% clean sheet probability based on 11FI's model, it's the second highest clean sheet odds that you'll see in any of the 380 fixtures this season, and serves as some good mental preparation for Double Game Week 26, where Gabriel is set to be my team's captain, and maybe even triple captain. More on that next week. But for now, that wraps up my Game Week 25 team selection. Drop a comment with any questions you need answering for your team in Game Week 25, and I'll respond with my thoughts before the deadline. If you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe will go a huge way in supporting this new channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back to prepare shortly for the very first Double Game Week of the season. Best of luck, and fingers crossed for another green arrow.